A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. We had started a discussion on ayat number 1 of Surah 35, particularly regarding the phrase Masna wa Sulasa wa Ruba. But since this same phrase happens in Surah An-Nisa also, therefore the discussion came to Surah An-Nisa. So today we are going to discuss some ayat of Surah An-Nisa. Last time I had introduced that inshallah I'll be discussing just ayat 1 to 6 only. And within that frame, I'll mainly concentrate on ayat number 2, ayat 2 and 3. But within that, the main focus will be on 2. But we will, of course, discuss 2, Masna, Sulas, or Ruba, also because here it has been discussed in the context of sociology. Ayat number 5 and 6 will remain in the perspective. It will support us understand these ayat. And I will also, during the discussion, show that how we have ignored the depth of the interpretation of these ayat. In order to understand that, I had last time suggested that you kindly conduct your own research, and I had suggested a couple of words that they in fact set our direction of understanding this ayat, these ayat. One was Zalika Adna. Why this is the baseline of the law in these ayat. This is just the baseline. It's the foundational law. It's not all law. And then if we have made an effort to go into that, then I had also invite attention to why in khiftum Allah tuksitu. Why in khiftum? No word in Quran Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is used without any meaning or any depth. So today we are going into the second level of depth. We'll try to understand why in khiftum Allah tuksitu, and then adna, in the starting point is adna. But even before that, we need to understand that what is in this world, what has happened in last 1500 years. I'm taking the base point from the revelation of Quran. What has happened within last 1500 years that we did not extract from Quran, but others have come to the same point, and in many cases, they are using the same terminology of Quran without knowing that it is in Quran. So I'll introduce to that also. That is, what I mean to say is that what is the purpose in these ayat? If you ask anybody, they will tell you plainly, superficially, that this ayat number 3 pertains to the permission for marriages. That's all. This is what we have done. And we have produced hundreds of thousands of books and literature, voluminous literature, plethora of books on this subject. But let us see what is the subject matter of these ayat, particularly ayat number 2 and 3. And what the purpose which I'll place before you, kindly you keep these words which I've highlighted. I'll present that in the perspective of these highlighted words. And the points which I'm going to submit before you for pertaining to the purpose are not all. It's much more, but I'll just point out some of the important points, that what is the purpose of the law, which is the baseline law in these ayat. So what is the main subject matter of ayat 2 to 6 with preamble in ayat 1 to 2? Preamble is 1 to 2. And the discussion will mainly be on 2 and 3, and 4 and 5, I said, will remain in the perspective. We'll draw support from that. Basically, these ayat, which I pointed out here between 2 to 6, and within that, 2 to 3, pertain to the displaced persons. And within that, the children and the women. Focus is within the displaced persons. The focus is on the women and the children. Why women and children? It is the philosophy of Quran that you have seen that in the case of, in the matter of inheritance, the shares are calculated on the basic entitlement of a woman. And at many other places, the rights are determined, first of all, with reference to the segment which is represented by women, children, old people, because the law is always made at the lowest level, and then it can be applied to everybody. So here also, although the ayah discusses women and children, but it and girls, women and girls, but it pertains to boys and males also, everybody. It pertains to them also. But the baseline is the women, their rights. And within that, girls also. And then within that, yatama girls, orphan girls. So where does this happen? Where is the situation? Which situation? It's not only generally, it has been said, it pertains to the special situation when there was war and there were yatama. Here, in these ayat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not differentiating between the yatama, the orphans, those who were brought as POWs, or who were ma malakat aymanukum, or who were the yatama of the Muslims, of the people of Medina or Makkah who had participated in the jihad and they had they were killed. So here yatama covers every yatim in this situation, not just the yatama who were brought from the battlefield. Therefore, it applies to all these situations, even in the world today. And it covers all the DPs, displaced persons. I'll explain that. These ayat pertain to, and I will point out just a few aspects that how the civilized people, civilized nations, they have dealt with this situation, and how we have just kept focused on, remained focused on 4 marriages. And the other point which is covered in these ayat is the best interest of the child. Now, this idea has developed after 19th century or during 19th century. Although we had this idea in the 6th century, 7th century, but we missed it. We remained focused on 4 marriages. So these are 2 of the main, many points, and some of the major points pertaining to displaced persons and child's based interest. This is the legal term, child's based interest. When any case comes to the court, even if it is talaq or whatever it is, the case has to be considered on the basis of the best interest of child if they have children. And here, you go to any person, mufti, you say, can I divorce my wife? Yes, you can. You have the right. But he never asked the question, do you have children? What arrangements were made for the child? Here, if you go to the court, they will first send you to the mediator, attorneys from both sides. First, decide about the children. Then decide about your property, so that there doesn't remain any point of discard afterwards also. This settle all these matters in the mediation. And the mediation report comes before the judge, and then he decides the case on the point of law. And even before that, here also they said that, have you gone for counseling? They send for counseling. Ayat number 33, ayat number 34 of Surah An-Nisa. But they are implementing that. Go for counseling, go for arbitration. First do that, then go for mediation. First do that, then come to the court. And court gives cooling off time. They call it cooling off time. In Texas also, they call it cooling off time. 90 days. Why they have selected 90 days? Why Quran has laid down the procedure of 3 months? Clean period, cooling period. When there is no stress. The idea is that you can't divorce during the period when the woman is not clean. She's under stress. Cooling period. They call it cooling period. They use the word cooling period, 90 days. You file the divorce today, come after 90 days. Cool off. This is the philosophy already there. I'm not presenting something which is new, that we have missed it. We have remained focused on something else. 4 wives. Human displacement refers to individuals, families, and groups forced to move against their will. In these ayat which we are discussing, all these categories of displaced people are included. But the Quran is starting discussion with the weakest segment. That is the women and the children, and within that, the yatama, who are completely helpless. Now they are homeless. They have nothing at all. Now, what is the law on the subject? These are the principles of law in the civilized world. Although they are present in these ayat, any person who moves from real property or moves his personal property from real property. Here you have moved your personal property from your real property back home. Your cases that covered under this clause. People come for asylum. They immigrate under different conditions. They may apply under that condition or not, that's different. But look at the provision which is here. And why this mal and property is being discussed in these ayat. Different aspects. Forced displacement may not be temporary phenomenon. It may be permanent. In the beginning, you don't know. Right from the beginning, right from day one, you have to make arrangements for particularly the yatama, the children, the women, as if you are going to settle them permanently. When the Ukrainian refugees entered Poland, just at the point of entry, they were granted citizenship, right to employment, right to citizenship, right to education, right to health. Because the policymakers knew that this war is going to prolong. It will be protracted. They knew their policies. And other European countries, they also did almost the same thing, similar things, but with varying degrees. Right from day one. Although there is some racial thinking behind that, because they didn't allow to others, like people come, there were people who were people of color. That is racial. But still, they did something that the people who were in large numbers, they provided them these legal protections. Now, it may be protected. Human displacement may be induced by all these categories are covered in these ayat, whether they come because of disaster, conflict, or any development project, drought, hunger, flooding, earthquakes, economic circumstances, or any political or other circumstance. They're all covered in this ayat. We need to derive laws, go deeper into this. We are just today discussing the second layer, that what is the purpose? And there are other layers also. And then the things which we should have done, the United Nations have done some of them. Lay down principle for this and see is there any principle which United Nations has brought which is not in these ayat? But we missed it. National laws, policies, and strategies on internal or international displacement need to be consistent with UN guiding principles. What the Quran demands, that the laws you make for these yatama, for these women, must be consistent with Quran. But they will be consistent with Quran when we know that what is in Quran. If we don't know what is in the Quran, then how anything we are going to make which may be or may not be consistent with Quran. This is the first condition. And every country, it applies to every country. IDPs, international or internal definition adopted locally, nationally, and regionally, whatever definition you adopt in your country. But it must be consistent with Quran. Here it says it must be consistent with United Nations. Have you done anything? Can you recall? And should not be narrower than what is provided for in the UN guiding principles. Here, you look at the terminology, guiding principles, it's not guidelines. There's a difference between guidelines and guiding principles. These are called the guiding principles. And the principles have the strength of rule. They have the strength of law. They have the strength of international law. And then being an IDP is not a legal status. I've highlighted this. Kindly understand this. Being a displaced person is not a legal status. That may be granted, refused, or ceased. If one is a displaced person, reach the border of any country, it's not a question of legal status. Let us see what is in the law, what the law says. No, it is a question of human rights. It's a question of human dignity. Then and there, you have to grant it. You have to allow this. You can't stop it. Kindly reread this. Being a displaced person is not a legal status which may be granted by any parliament. This is granted by Quran. That may be granted or refused or seized and say, no, this is not under the law, not under our law. It is under the law of Allah. You have to give asylum to the person who has come to you for protection. Now, DPs may include individuals who are citizens or habitual residents. If somebody comes from Burma, came to the Indian border, to the Bangladesh border, Muslims came to the Muslim border. They were looking into the documents. They had no documents. Either they are citizens or even without any document, they are the habitual residents. Habitual resident. This is the international terminology of the international law. Allow them, protect them. But the Muslims did not provide them any protection. What is happening to Yemenis, to Syrians, to Iraqis? Has any Muslim country opened their borders to them, granted them any status? Not to them all, to their women, not to all women, to the girls, not to all girls, just the yatama. Because we have not understood these ayat. Internally displaced persons are, now this is defined. This is definition. I'm not going to in the United Nations Charter. Then displaced people are not the same as refugees. There's a difference. Displaced persons, technically, legally, are different from refugees. For whatever reason, a displaced person can come to you for any reason. This is much broader. Then refugees have same human rights as legal residents. The moment it enters your territory, it is now your responsibility to protect him. Tuksitu. We don't, the Western people don't know the meaning of tuksitu, but you will see. I'll show you the law. They have used the same word. Tatabaddalu. They have used the same word in English. In their law, they don't know Quran, but they know the philosophy, they know the reasoning. including freedom of opinion, expression, thought, all the freedoms, all the rights, and protection against forcible return to any place where their life, safety, liberty, and our health are not safe. That is why right from first day, they were absorbed in the society. Now, what about children? In this ayat, in these ayat, women, particularly children, and particularly orphans are mentioned. Children have always been most vulnerable segment of society, in any society, always. During Pharaoh's time, infants, born infants, they were killed, boys. In the animal world, the most vulnerable, weakest offspring is the human offspring. Therefore, they need the greatest protection. And these ayat provide. You will see when we come to discuss the words in the ayat. I'm just giving the background. This is the purpose. Today, if we talk of today, there are 7 billion people, 7.5 billion people, more than that. Today, children are almost 50% of about 1 billion people living on less than $1.9 a day, less than $2. The population living under the poverty line, the definition is different in different countries. In America, it's different. But there are countries where the poverty line is defined at less than $2. Take the case of most of the Muslim countries, living some very few of them. They are living below $2 per day. And in some cases, $2 per family per day. Now, within that poverty, there are about 1 billion people above. And within that 1 billion people, 50% are children. That is 500 million children are all the time at risk in our societies, in Muslim societies, mostly. Now, you may not be feeling comfortable with this, but my purpose is not just to show the grammar of the lisan of the word, but also what are the treasures hidden in this Quran. All the ulum. Law, what is the law on this? All citizens, these are extracts from the laws of the civilized world, Europe, America. All citizens shall endeavor. That is what Quran demands. It is your responsibility. Tuksitu, you do this. Tadilu, you do this. You do this. All citizens, is it different from the Quranic ayat? You do this. Tuksitu, you do this. All citizens shall endeavor to ensure that children are born and brought up in good mental and physical health. It is responsibility, parental responsibility. It is the responsibility of the extended family. It is the responsibility of the society. It is the responsibility of the state. To the extent that Hazrat Umar said that any animal, if he dies because of drought or any other situation, any condition, along a Nile is my responsibility. If the child is hungry, crying in the home, it is my responsibility to provide the milk and the feed for him. Do we understand Quran? Now, all children shall equally be afforded guaranteed level of life and be kindly treated. Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, treat these orphans. You are the guardians, treat them kindly, keep them in your family, absorb them in your family, and we harass them with sensuous exposures because of our wrong interpretations, that you can expose yourself sensuously, sensually, sexually to the Yatama girls. Isn't it a sexual assault? The definition, if you take from the Prophet peace be upon him, that zina can be committed only even through staring from looks. And Allah knows the traitor of the eye. And here we are allowing to expose one's private parts to the girls to the orphans who are the weakest segment of the society without understanding the total context and the text of Quran. Then all children, then what is the best interest? When any case comes before the court, as I said earlier also, it has to be first decided after knowing whether there are children or not. If there are children, then where lies the best interest of the child? With mother, with father, with both, in the family or even outside the family. Judge has the power, authority to decide the case in the best interest of the child. 2 years back, there was a case in Washington. A very high family from Pakistan was involved and they engaged me. I counseled the court. I gave my opinion to the court. And the case had to be decided in the best interest of the child. Mother was in America, Pakistani American, father was in Pakistan, went back. He was also American, Pakistani American. Boy used to come and back and forth between America and Pakistan. But once he came back, mother retained him. She went to the court and she wanted him to be with him. And she was not willing to return the boy. And they filed a suit and then it came to here. The case has to be decided not on what the mother wants, not on what the father wants, and not on how wealthy they are, or what are their designs in future. The father in Pakistan was a highly influential, rich person, minister, MNA, senator, enjoying all positions. Courts decide cases on best interest, determinations for child's safety, well-being, and growth. Safety first, well-being next, and then growth. These are given in these ayat. I have not brought these from here and there. And then children silently suffer. They don't know the law. They don't even know how to complain. They may be depressed inside, but they silently suffer. How they suffer? Have you ever understood the suffering of a child who is sleeping in the street? They silently suffer. The elderly people, the grown-up people, they may express themselves with the friends, oh, it's very painful. But these children, they can't even express themselves. I read in one of the World Bank surveys, what is poverty? They were asking questions. And the person replied, poor person. They asked the poor person, you want to know what is poverty? You come to my home. He was living in a pipe in the street. You want to see what is poverty? Come to my dwelling. And then here, children suffer all these things silently. They can't even complain, even if they want to complain. They have tears in their eyes, but we don't understand why they have tears in their eyes. What are they feeling? Unstable family. If the family is unstable, the most sufferer is the child, not the mother or the father who are fighting. What is unstable family? It has been recognized in this society, in the West. They have defined it and they have protected it. If the attorney brings the case that the child is in a family which is unstable, and what is unstable family? You can well see that. Not only this, broken family. All these cases are covered in these ayat. Broken family. How they suffer, children. Unstable home. This is another term. It's different from unstable family and unstable home. These are concepts. Quran has given philosophy. Then unstable home. And then what is child welfare? We think that giving child a toffee, giving child clothes, and a couple of dollars. That is child welfare. No. Kindly go deeper into these ayat. I have selected only those items which are main in topic in these ayat, main points. Child welfare is continuum of services designed to ensure that children are safe. Quran placed them in the family. Quran did not create orphanage separately, Darul Aman, in the family. On oath, Amanakum, entrusted them to the people who were considered to be pious people, who could look after them in the family, not outside the family, within the four walls of the house, within the family, and have necessary support to grow along with the children in the family, along with the sons and daughters in the family, along with the sisters and mother in the family. And I will show you the words when we come to discuss about Arabic words in Quran. Growth is one of the important concerns of Quran for the child. And then child welfare is a continuum of services, and then it is a system. Throwing a coin at the child, an orphan, a beggar at the street, in the street is not welfare. It is a system. It refers to group of services, not just one service. It's a concerted, collected effort. Here I have been emphasizing that we create these services, group of services designed to promote well-being, safety, permanency, stability and strength within family, particularly those who don't have family, who are orphans. Within family, not outside the family. Quran placed them within the family. What we have done within the family, kindly allow me to emphasize it again, within the family and society. Child welfare agencies work for child protection, investigation, family-centered services and supports, foster care, and adoption. Ultimately, ma malakat aymanakum. Assimilate them ultimately. Fankihu. What is the meaning of fankihu? Integrate them in the family. It doesn't say that create prostitution. Make them the sensual objects. What is the meaning of fankihu? What is the meaning of nakah? What is the meaning of nikah? Why we do this? We integrate in the family, and Quran ordered, fankihu, integrate them in the family, your own family, your own self, integrate them with yourself in the family, as family. This is the meaning of fankihu. And then society supports and coordinates with state services, not away from them, to protect and defend child rights. And these are all ingrained, what we call, if we can call it, the society of Medina. They were integrated under the protection of the Prophet, state. And then social, anybody who had a complaint could directly go to the Prophet, could go to the state, who had the power. Social principles. What are the social principles involved here? In these ayat, we'll see that interagency collaboration, all people collaborating, neighborhood collaborating, individualized strength-based care, masna, wasulas, waruba. It's individual, yet they are being grouped, but not a bigger group, not hundreds, not thousands. Last week, there was a news in a country like United Kingdom, in Great Britain, 200 orphan childs are missing. Why? They did not group them in smaller groups who could be handled as family, within family, far family. 200. What happened when Trump had ordered separating the mothers and children at the border? And after that, And I don't know after that how long they could not match the mothers and children. And even today, I don't know 100% have been matched or not. They were separated. Just stacked on one side, hundreds of children, and then how can you identify infants? They all look alike when they are just newly born. Individualized, small groups, cultural competence. Don't separate them. How to categorize them? How to make this masna sulas a group socially? If they are speaking the same language, if they have come from the same culture, if they have come from the same neighborhood, if they have come from the same country, cultural competence, family involvement, and community-based services. That is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, thank you. All of you, it is now the responsibility of all of you to integrate them in the families. And then ultimately, Quran, at every point, wherever there are ayat and muhkamat, orders, Quran says there is accountability. You will be taken into account. And within this group of ayat, there are ayat and muhkamat, there are ahkamat, and there is one part which is mutashabih. I'll just give a quote as an example when you go to discuss this. Child could be removed from home under the law and placed outside under care anywhere, e.g. in case of abuse, neglect, physical neglect, medical neglect, educational neglect, emotional neglect, emotional. These were made into smaller groups, twos, threes, fours, to remain within the family so that they don't suffer emotional stress. And then there are other reasons. Child welfare system also looks into so many other things, auxiliary things. Child protection plans government makes, society makes, NGO make. Then local authorities work with them. Do we have a system? Take any example in any country. Now, this is very important. The laws in the civilized world require, as the ayat requires, tuksitu, all of you. Here the law requires everyone should be concerned about child's welfare, whether you are related or not. Yeah, you are just a neighbor, you are the passerby. Everyone should be concerned about the child's welfare. How? It is a responsibility. It is cognizable. One can be taken to account. Accountability is involved. Law is involved. Punishment is involved. Anyone can report personally or through email or through phone. The state authority is concerned anytime if he or she thinks a child is in a danger. It is your responsibility. Calls are free, and one doesn't have to say who he is or she is who's reporting. You just have to report. It is responsibility. Then coming back to these ayat. Now, before we discuss these ayat, I'm placing some groups of ayat before you to consider, before you go back to the ayat. What is the difference between Atul Yatama Amwalahum and Atul Nisa Sadaqathim? Sadaqathin. What a difference in the meaning here in this at. And then with these two, what is the difference when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala totus sufa? So what is the difference between atu and totu? Have we differentiated? Kindly open any translation before you. And does it convey the meaning, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is wanting us to say, to do? I placed before, I don't know anything. Very humbly I submit. I just placed these ayat, words, facts of the world before you to kindly consider and decide yourself. It's not my philosophy. I don't know. Then, just as a clue, Atu is imperative. Atul Yatama is an imperative. Atul Nisa, Atu is imperative, but Tutu is not imperative. So what is the difference? Atu is order, but Tutu is an order in a different way. Imperative verb gives command to the person being addressed, do this. Atul Yatama, Atul Nisa. But Tutu, see, let us see what is it. It is a Jasse mood called Jasse mood. What is that? It is a mood verb. It is a verb which issuing orders, commanding. The Jasse mood, the subjunctive mood is how you express hypothetical situation and outcomes. It is the mood used to express wishes. Allah wishes. He's expressing his wish, his recommendation, hopes, desires, and any other imagined outcome. Desires. Allah is asking you that he desires it. It's a polite way of saying this thing. Saying it lovingly. But there is an order, command. Then this is grammar. I'm not going to this. And then here. What is the difference between fankihu and ankihu? What is the difference between Bismillah and Bi-Ismi Allah? Is there any difference in the meaning? When I say Bismillah or I say Bi-Ismi Allah, is there the difference in meaning? There's a difference in Qiraat. There's a difference in Tilawat. There may be difference in Tajweed. So far as meaning is concerned, Bismillah, I have discussed this in my book about 28 years back in my book, The Gateway to the Quran. Bismillah and Bi-Ismi. What is the difference? No difference in meaning, in nuance. So then what is the difference between fankihu and ankihu? But the basic thing is, no difference. Basic thing is that it, by interpretation, it is commanding to integrate these people within your family, not throw them out. And then these are the meanings. The objective is of this fankihu to integrate in the family system. And here, what is the difference here? When you say Atu Zakat, the object is direct now being attached to At, and in the other case, Atul Yatama Amwalahum. There are two objects. Yatama is coming first, the first object, At to the Yatama, their Amwal. What is the emphasis? Now, just for you to consider, and then understand what is Mal. I think I have covered about, shall I go on? Continue?
You can go on it.
Okay.
Can you close?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
So, okay, I'll just today
discussion.
try to conclude the perspective, and then we discuss the ayat maybe next time. Huh? So another important word used here is Mal. Mal of Yatama. When Yatama have come, say, from Roman Empire, from Persian Empire, were they carrying any gold, any Mal? No. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us here that Atul Yatama Amwalahum, what does that mean? It means that it is covering the all categories of Yatama who were displaced, whether they were local or they were outside, whether they were the orphans of the Shuhada who had taken part in jihad or who had been brought from outside as POWs or through any other thing, which I've already explained, that who are the displaced person. Delivery of zakat involves entitlement, istihqaq. You can give zakat only and only to the mustahiq. This is the philosophy of zakat. And then, whereas delivery of mal, atul yatama amwalahum, mal to the orphans involves their title and capacity, not the entitlement. title and capacity. So what responsibility Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is placing in this ayat? Have I understood? Have I considered? Atul yatama amwalahum. Now this opens up the entire world, new world and new laws. There are dedicated, specific codes and laws on the subject. Why 200 people children are missing in UK? Why children were missing on the American-Mexican border? They didn't understand this thing. Although there are provisions in the law. When any child is brought to you, what IDI is doing, IDI is an organization looking after the orphans and poor people. You know that. They just register the name. They register. They don't know the name. Child cannot speak. He is less than 5 years, 4 years, 3 years, or the infant. What to do? IDI used to give his own name and give the name to the child and give his own name, so and so father of IDI, so and so father of IDI, hundreds and thousands of sons of IDI. But then they realize that when these people are exposed to the society, then they will know that they were orphans, they were abandoned. Matter came to the court and the Sharia court, and I was also luckily on that bench. Then they decided that they can be given different sets of names. So and so son of Abdullah, so and so son of Muhammad, son of so and so son of Ali, things like that. And then there were other also options which were, giving, and now NADRA has adopted it. NADRA is the registration system for all the citizens in the country. Now NADRA uses those things on the basis of their judgment. As soon as the child is brought, who is orphan, who can't speak, these things have to be done right at that time. Did we think in these ayat why Quran is asking these things? Atul yatama amwalahum. Then what I have to do? I have to do many things. Capacity is to be ensured by continually passing them through testing, training. Ibtala, balagh, test them. And what we know about this, how we can test them. Just when they grow 20 years, after 20 years, we'll give them a mathematical test. And if they can do this, then okay, we say, now they are mature, they have rushed, and we give them the property. No? Test them as you test your own children every year in the school, in the college, in the university. And then how can you test them every year? You can test them only when you give them education, when you give them training, when you give them skill, when they are in your family. There are ayat, I'll show you in these ayat, only in these ayat, I'll show you all these responsibilities are there. But we have not gone into the depth. We are afraid. If I tell these things in detail, people leave me, they go away. This is my experience of 28 years. They run away. They don't want to listen to the depth. Next day. No, we don't want to listen to this. But whatever I know, I try to continue with that. Allah may accept it. And then when orphans, particularly female, are interested to individual or organization, ma malakat aymanuhum, besides personal data, name, from where the child was picked up or brought, in what circumstance, everything has to be recorded so that you can correlate afterwards. Identification, wealth details, even if there is zero. Details of management, etc. of the person and of the property. There are two things. When a child is entrusted to you, there are two things. The person of the person and the property of the person. These are two different things in law. And then within property, the real property and the personal property. All these details have to be noted down right at that time, immediately, so that they don't get mixed up. We are not doing this. Are some of the most immediate actions required on priority. Quran demands this. That's why it is kept masna, masulas, ruba. If there are two children of different ages, one is say 4 years, the other is 6 years, maybe the 6-year child give you a clue if they are kept together in the same language, if they belong to the come from the same area, that his name is also this is like this. And he has such and such a name. He may give you some details about it. Don't spread them into bigger mass. Masna, Sulasa, Ruba. And then court may give detailed instructions. If the society is not accepting it, there are laws. Court will involve itself. It is a responsibility of the judge under the law, written law. Court may give detailed instructions with respect to guardian, who will be the guardian of the person. Prophet took up this responsibility. He appointed the guardian. Ma malakat aymanakum. And then who will be the custodian? Who will take the decisions in the family? And ad litem is a term, the legal term. Court can also separately appoint a friend of the child. Friend of the child ad litem. Even if he has father and mother, if the judge thinks that they are fighting, they are not taking enough care of the interests of the child, his property for the future, he can appoint another person as the friend of the child, usually from the attorneys, and they represent the interests of the child, even against the father and mother. Ad litem. And then courts may appoint ad litem to act in a lawsuit on behalf of a child. When court appoints a guardian ad litem, just a litem or ad litem, or just or the guardian ad litem, he acts as a neutral investigator for the court. Whether father is right, mother is right, they are going good, they are taking care, or they are not taking care, future of the child is safe or not, or both of them may be insane, they may be mad. Here, last week, I was really in pain. I couldn't eat on that day when I went back home. Mother abandoned the 10 years child. Father abandoned the 10 years child. We don't want to take the child, but just we want to separate. And we don't want to take the responsibility for the child. Both of them. The court will decide now. Look at the situation which is developing. This is not one case. In one case, I suspected, and when I spoke to the child, on that day I was, I think, the saddest. That was the saddest day for me. As to the property, when it is brought, the child is brought, then immediately these things have to be known and noted at that time. After 20 years, what will you know? That what property he had? If he's a local orphan, for example, there are provisions as to rights, duties, and no rights. No rights is a term. There are certain rights attached to the property, and there are certain no rights, that you don't have a right, such and such a right in this property. And privileges, powers, liabilities, they all have to be noted down. Colonies, in the colonies, the colonialists in the 19th century, they came there in 15th, 16th, 17th century, but this law was introduced in 19th century, particularly if you take the example of India in 1886. We didn't do anything. The occupiers, the imperialists, the colonialists whom we curse, they introduced this law. What was the law? And they used the terminology of the Quran without knowing. They introduced Guardians and Wards Act. This is the name of the law, Guardians and Wards Act. It defines minor, guardian, and persons, and who can apply for guardianship of minor. The court appoints the guardian. Prophet appointed the guardian. The state appointed the guardian. He was the state, he was the king, he was the ruler, he was the judge. Prophet appointed. Judge has jurisdiction to determine position of someone for who can be the Ma Malakat, who can be the guardian of the Ma Malakat Aymanuhum. And these are the words of the law. I've taken these words in inverted commas, protecting or defending the minor. And Quran says, Tuksitu. Isn't it the interpretation of Tuksitu? Quran says Tuksitu, and the guardians and minors wards act says defend and protect the children. You have been appointed by the court. Ma malakat aymanuhum. And best interest of the minor, best interest of the child, being legally responsible. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in these ayat, be aware of me, you will come to me, I'll take you to account, you are responsible. You can't throw your children away like this, abandon them. Or when the orphan has come to you, you can't just throw them. Prophet, peace upon him, took the orphan by the finger, took him to Abu Jahl to get his right. Why he involved himself? Custody refers to legal arrangements. It's not whimsical arrangements, personal arrangements that I can expose myself to the child. Legal arrangements. Everything you have to do, ma malakat aymanum, legally. Legal arrangements that dictate with whom the child will live and who will make major life decisions on behalf of the child. Fa'ankihu. Who will make this decision to integrate them in the family? Custody has two parts, legal and physical. I'm not going to these details. We simply say the child was given ma malakat aymanuhum, that's all. There are different aspects. Go deeper into this. The ayahs are explaining. Legal and physical. Legal guardianship is one of options to parents for care in variety of situations. There are different aspects. I think I'm not going into more details. I'm just exposing these things before you. And then mal, I think this is also a bigger subject. So I'll stop here. Next time, inshallah, we'll take up what is mal, for which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, Atul yatama amwal mal amwal. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzat amma yasifun wa salamun alal mursaleen walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. After the dua, you can unmute yourself, and if there is any guidance for me, I'll really appreciate. Thank you very much.
اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه. اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وعافنا فيمن عافيت وتولنا فيمن توليت وبارك اللهم لنا فيما أعطيت وقنا واصرف عنا شر ما قضيت فإنك يا ربنا تقضي بالحق ولا يقضى عليك. اللهم ادخلنا برحمتك في عبادك الصالحين. اللهم اخرجنا من ظلمات الجهل والوهم إلى نور العلم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم اجعلنا ممن يستمعون القول فيتبعون أحسنه. اللهم اكفنا بحلالك عن حرامك وبطاعتك عن معصيتك وفضلك عن من سواك. اللهم بفضلك ورحمتك على كلمة الحق والدين. اللهم انصر الإسلام وعز المسلمين يا أكرم الأكرمين. Oh Allah, spread your mercy upon us, shower us with your blessings, increase our knowledge, grant us forgiveness, and reward us with the company of the prophets in the Firdaus al-A'la. Oh Allah, forgive our parents and all our friends and relatives who have passed away. Oh Allah, make their graves guarded from heaven and grant them the Firdaus al-A'la. Oh Allah, we have several of our friends and relatives who are sick. Oh Allah, we have our son Ma'raj, our daughter Aisha Wani, our brother Munshi and his wife and others. Oh Allah, grant to all of them full and speedy recovery. Oh Allah, guide all children, protect them and make them righteous. Oh Allah, we ask you every name you have elected for yourself, that none of us leave this gathering, but his pains have been relieved, his worries have been removed, his debts have been paid, his weaknesses have been concealed, his sins have been forgiven, and his needs have been fulfilled. سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. والصلاة والسلام على خير المرسلين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.